I voted for him for CIA director. I think he's got a great intel background, but he just has a track record of statements that are sort of anti-diplomatic during the discussion about the Iran deal.
I think he sets a poor example in terms of American values, so I will strongly oppose his nomination.
Talking about Mike Pompeo, of course, today's Wall Street Journal editorial took a jab at Democrats and some Republicans who are giving Pompeo pushback, asking, quote, who needs a Secretary of State? But today, President Trump backs up his decision, tweeting, Democrats are obstructing good, hopefully great people, wanting to give a big portion of their life to work for our government, hence the American people. They are slow walking all of my nominations, hundreds of people. At this rate, it would take 9 years for all approvals. One of our next guests says the Democratic obstruction is karma. Former Clinton senior advisor Philippe Reines is tweeting, quote, Senator Bob Corker, who wrote, Mike Pompeo deserves a vote in confirmation of the Secretary of State. Remember, both Hillary Clinton and John Kerry got 94 votes. And Philippe writes, you know what's memorable, Senator Corker? Merrick Garland getting 0 votes. So suck it up. He's always so expressive in all of his tweets. Philippe, good to see you. Steve Hayes, good to see you as well. Thank you both for being here. But doesn't it point to sort of a lack of civilized behavior on the Hill when you look back at the records of the way that Condoleezza Rice and Colin Powell, and John Kerry were approved by vast majorities, and yet Mike Pompeo, who went to, is a Harvard graduate and graduated in the top of his class from West Point. They seem to have some problem with him, Philippe.
Well, Mike Pompeo doesn't have 90, 94, 95 votes because he doesn't have the entire Republican caucus. The person you didn't show is Rand Paul. Rand Paul at the moment is the biggest impediment to Mike Pompeo making it out of committee, let alone on the floor. And I think in terms of tradition, the Congress, the Senate has been deferential to the president very much, especially in their first cabinet. But 15 months later, and President Trump got his whole first cabinet without a problem, except for the labor secretary who pulled out himself. But 15 months later, you have Rex Tillerson, who was fired, David Shulkin, who was fired. You have Tom Price, who was fired.
That's kind of apples and oranges. You're talking about approvals, and then you're talking about people who didn't work out once they were in their job. But I want Steve to weigh in here as well on the basic question, which is this something that should be approved? This is the person the president would like to see at the State Department, and he was approved roundly, 66 votes in his favor, Steve, when he was being considered for CIA.
Yeah, look, I think the default should be to approve the president's nominees. And I would say that the argument that Philippe is making would, in fact, argue in favor of confirming Mike Pompeo. He's somebody who's had a successful tenure in his 15 months at the CIA. He went in a difficult position as an elected official, as a Republican, as somebody who was going to represent the Trump administration when the president was, or president-elect was in a fight with the intel agency. And he won over the bureaucracy and conducted himself, by all accounts, as a very effective CIA director. So isn't that somebody that you'd want to have in Donald Trump's ear as he's doing things like negotiating with North Korea or fixing the Iran deal? I would think that Democrats would be desperate to have somebody who's as stable and thoughtful a character as Mike Pompeo is.
So why don't they?
I think those are good questions for Jeff Flake and Rand Paul, the two Republicans who are wavering. I mean, Rand Paul has flat out said he won't vote for it.
But the fact of the matter is, when you look back at these prior appointments, and I promise I'm going to let you finish, but in the past, it has been a very bipartisan, and there's always going to be some people on both sides of the fence who vote no. But the fact is that there's been this sort of vote of confidence that the president is the president. He should have the person that he wants in this position. And if, the person doesn't have 3 heads or, something ridiculously egregious, that it's courtesy to let him go through with those moves. Well, there's no courtesy left, though, it would appear.
No, actually, he got his whole cabinet last year, and I think that was overwhelming deferential to the president. Look, I think there have been less than a dozen in our nation's history of cabinet secretaries who have been voted down. I'm not sure Mike Pompeo is going to be the next one. You already had a Democrat today who said that they were going to vote for him. So the only reason it wouldn't happen would be if Rand Paul took really extreme procedural steps. But I think after 15 months, again, people are wary. And let's not forget, Mike Pompeo had a hearing, and he said things during the hearing that people were concerned by, both Democrats and Republican. So, I mean, that's the job. The Senate's not a rubber stamp. There's a balance between being deferential to the president's
Yeah,
picks.
but look, Martha, the Democrats are just playing games here. I understand why Philippe would want to focus on Rand Paul, but if you look at what Bob Menendez, the senior Democrat on the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, is doing, he submitted 698 questions for the record that Mike Pompeo and his team are supposed to answer. That's not because he wants answers to those questions. That's because he wants to grind the process to a halt. And if the leaders on the Democratic side are playing politics at a moment like this, after Republicans voted 94-2 for Hillary Clinton, 94-3 for John Kerry, I think it's disgraceful.
You know, I want to see the 698 questions. I'm going to pull up that list. That must be fascinating. Thanks, you guys. Steve, good to see you tonight. Philippe, always a pleasure.
Thanks,
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Martha.
So coming up next, you know the saying that a magician never reveals his secrets. Illusionist David Copperfield forced in a court of law to spill the beans on one of his biggest tricks. Attorney Mark Eiglarsh is here on this bizarre case coming up next.